Today, we are joined by Catherine Hyza, who is a Primal Trust graduate with another amazing healing story, and she has a bucket full of wisdom to share. She had a lot of issues, which I'll let you get into, but I know some of the primary issues were autoimmune Hashimotos, completely reversed, complex PTSD, symptoms of insulin resistance, and a plethora of other symptoms, which I'm sure a lot of people will relate to. And the good news is that all of these things are healable, reversible through doing nervous system work. And this is just going to be such an incredible story for those of you who relate. So welcome, Catherine.
Hello, thank you so much. I had to actually look up my list of symptoms because I couldn't remember them anymore. So this is how fast and how far I've come with healing. But yeah, we'll get into that a little bit.
Well, what I would love for you to share with us is start off by sharing how you got sick, because that's always, you said you had quite a great life going. How did you get sick? And then what were your symptoms? What were you dealing with? And just take us on a little journey of your healing story.
Yeah. So to jump forward a little bit, I had 32 symptoms and diagnoses in total, which I still think is absolutely insane. But to go back to the beginning, I actually had a pretty good life. Like, I was a purpose and business coach, so I was obsessed with like finding my own purpose. And I turned that into a business and helped others find their purpose. So, I was kind of living my dream life, my dream business. I was living on my dream island. I live in Cyprus currently still, which is a tiny little island in the Mediterranean. I had my dream partner. People keep asking me, everything sounds so perfect. How on earth did you get so sick? But I call it, it's my perfect storm, basically. And I always call it when shit hits the fan, really. So I think I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's in November 19, around that time. I became pregnant. I was pregnant in, I think, January, February of 2020, just before the pandemic, and had a miscarriage. So I was kind of reeling from hormonal. I think a miscarriage happened in like March. So it was an early loss. But then I was still reeling from like hormonal ups and downs, various, I think, possibly chronic Epstein-Barr viral infections sort of used my low immune system to take hold of me. Then I had, what else did I have? Yeah, I had also dental issues, dental braces, basically shifting and loosening my teeth. I might have had silent infection going on with that already. And then what happened then? Oh yeah, so the hormonal case, Epstein-Barr virus. Then I had COVID vaccination. I had family visits, like a lot of emotional stress. I was publishing a book at the time, so it was a lot of work stress. And then I took a flight and didn't sleep for like 36 hours or something. And the next day, I had my very first panic attack going to a family barbecue. And I was hiding in the bushes because anxiety was peaking. My heart was racing. I couldn't tell reality from fiction almost anymore. I was so sleep deprived. I had lots of emotional triggers. My mother was there as well. My grandparents, my granddad had had to go to hospital that night. So there were so many things like just pounding on my door, really. And I crashed. I completely crashed. I somehow made it home. My mother found me hiding behind the bushes, but didn't know what to do with me, really. And I somehow made it back home. And I didn't get up anymore. I didn't get up anymore after that. I was just completely crashed by that time. So yeah.
That is such a great example of what a perfect storm is like, because it doesn't mean that everything in your life was going wrong for many years. It could just be a short period of time where there's too many events too close together, where your brain and your nervous system doesn't get to go through the processing and integration. And yeah, there's usually some straw that breaks the camel's back, and it sounds like exhaustion, panic attack. And that's what we often see is the nervous system. The bucket is finally full. The nervous system saying the stress bucket is full. And now we're going to go into collapse or crash. And we move into what we often call dorsal vagal shutdown. And getting out of that can be really tricky because the nervous system has decided you're done, you've maxed out, and we are not going to trust you right now to modulate your energy, to integrate what's going on. And so we're just going to put the brakes on and shut down. And that happens to people. And what's crazy is it can last not only days, weeks, months, but sometimes years for people. And so it's so important that you get that message of what that crash looks like, so that if someone is hearing this and they're resonating with like, oh my gosh, so much is happening right now, slow down, take a little mini break and start processing what's happened before it adds up. All right, continue with your journey.
So valuable. No, absolutely. And I do think that the dysregulation probably, I mean, of course, it started before that, like setting up your own business, going through fears of failure, financial trauma. You know, I wasn't very successful at the beginning of my business. So, you know, that added to the stress in paradise, living in paradise, everything looked great, but imposter syndrome, like there were so many things already kind of chipping away at my nervous system. So absolutely, that was already happening, but I did not see that. And I did not know what a dysregulated nervous system would be. So yeah, fast forward. So I crashed. I didn't get up for, well, I could physically walk, but I was then diagnosed with, after a couple months, I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue as well, or like some sort of fatigue. I had my blood samples taken, and my thyroid levels were so low. Like there was, thyroid is in charge of energy, you know, metabolism and all those things. I mean, it was barely existent. It was like, I wasn't, that's exactly what it felt like. I wasn't sure whether I was alive or whether I was dead. That's what it felt like. There was just no energy to brush my teeth or my hair or get up and do anything really. So this is me basically lying in bed for weeks and months after that. And goodness, oh, that was such a horrible time. And they then changed my thyroid medication to sort of have that pick up and to treat my Hashimotos, because by then I was starting to be very depressed, lots more anxiety, panic attacks, all those kind of things. And then there was this doctor saying, yeah, just take this medication and just stop taking the other medication. And I was like, yeah, if the doctor says so, you know, that's what I'm going to do. Oh my goodness. That was probably the worst time of my life, because I was just leaving that one medication, you know, off and just getting on, slowly starting with the new medication. I mean, let's be honest, she almost killed me because I almost took my own life. And that's how my body then even crashed more. Because if you play around with thyroid medication, you know, this is what happens. I mean, depression, yeah, complete like lack of energy, fatigue, and all those things, they just hit. So that was horrible. You know, nothing against doctors, but there's some very unreasonable and unresponsible advice out there, and we trust them, you know, and that's yeah, I almost paid that with my own life, really. So at least we sort of then managed the Hashimoto a bit better. The other medication took hold, and sort of I had a little bit of energy left, but I was in a very bad state at that time. So
wow, I'm so glad you spoke to this. I was just having another interview with somebody, the same thing. You get so down that you feel like the only way out is taking your life. And I think that that's more common than people realize, especially now. And we need to speak about this. We need to be open that this is what can happen when these things go unchecked, when there isn't the right supports in our system for these crashes, where there's just not help. Like there's just not solutions in our typical paradigm. And in that helplessness, there becomes hopelessness and despair. And it's a very serious thing. So thank you for speaking to this, because I know people are going to hear this that feel that exact same way, but there is hope. So let's get to what continues?
There is. Yeah, there is. I want to add one thing. It wasn't that I wanted to die. It's just I didn't know how to live anymore. And I think a lot of people will know that feeling when you're in so much despair. I mean, time had gone on, you know, it was so this all happened 2021, that kind of timeline. So by then it sort of had gone on for quite a while. And yeah, and it's hard to stay positive throughout all this. I mean, there's people who experience 15 years of chronic illness. I only had 3. It was 3 years in total, but there was no hope. There was none of that. So yeah, it was really like I didn't know how to live anymore after a couple of years of this. So yeah, absolutely. And especially if you feel that way, please know things can change again. Yeah, this is what we're going to get to now. So I started with a neighbor of mine had come across DNRS. And the fun thing is that neighbor is a doctor. She wasn't practicing though for years because she had gotten so ill. She could not heal herself. She didn't know what was going on. There was no support for her either, and she was a medical professional, you know. So I was like, okay, I don't feel so bad of not being able to get out of this myself. So together with my neighbor, we started DNRS, and I saw some slight improvements. There was some brain retraining and so on, but I got much worse a couple of months later. So my relationship was on the rocks. My husband was so exhausted from looking after me. He was the cook, he was the sole income earner, he was my massage therapist, my therapist, you know, he had so many roles. He was exhausted by that time. So he was like, I cannot continue living like this. So, you know, I felt by that time, I felt like I'd lost my family. I'd lost all my friends because I could not keep up relationships. I lost my business, which was very important to me. I'd lost myself completely. And now the last pillar was sort of breaking away. Again, I completely crashed and was hospitalized for a month. It was a psychosomatic clinic. And that was probably the best thing that ever happened to me. This clinic, I mean, you know, we talked about medical professionals who did not support me in the right way that I needed, but the clinic truly was amazing. So they built me up to, maybe I was down here, and they built me up to here, just a tiny bit, so I could really see, okay, there might be a life out there. And after a month in the clinic, which was fantastic, you know, some little improvement. The first time I really started therapy, I was diagnosed with cPTSD at the clinic. So hospitalized for a month. And I already knew, let me actually talk about this. So at the clinic, I was alone in my room, and I had a severe trauma response because I was talking to my husband. We were still trying to figure out if we're going to give this another shot, and I had a severe abandonment and rejection wound sort of pop up, and it was horrible. And I had been looking through Instagram videos of nervous system regulation. Like, this had come up for the very first time at that point. And I managed to calm that trauma response with nervous system regulation, with like shaking, you know, pushing against the wall, lying down on the floor, like going from sort of active triggered state into a calm state within like an hour. I cried all night because it was the first time I'd ever been able to do that. And, you know, before, when I had trauma responses from cPTSD, I had no tools. I did not know what to do. So that was a milestone, and that was from Instagram videos.
Yeah.
And that's how I came across Primal Trust, because I realized there is not just brain retraining, there's nervous system regulation, there's vagus nerve toning. There is so many tools before you start brain retraining to actually create capacity in your nervous system to do these things. So yeah. Once I left the clinic, I already knew at the clinic, I was like, I don't have capacity right now, but once I leave the clinic, I am gonna sign up to Primal Trust immediately. That I knew that already. So
Wow.
yeah.
This story is so brilliant in a lot of ways, because you're demonstrating that, one of my theories is, I love brain retraining. And for a lot of people, it may all be all they need. But when we have deep trauma in our nervous system, the fact that, you did find some tools, and that's one of the most positive things I've heard said about social media in a long time, that it saved you in that experience, but that it was a physical somatic release where you could self-manage, and it didn't have to do with the brain. Abandonment wounds are in the body, folks. They're not in the brain. And I don't believe you can brain retrain your way out of abandonment wounding. Just for anyone listening, that was my trauma. I love brain retraining. Gets you to a certain point. Abandonment wounding is in the body. It's in the cells. It's in our somatic system. So thank you for speaking to that, because I think it's a really important point that you made. And I'm so glad that you found us. And just for people listening, I'm curious, tell us a little bit more about what the clinic was and is, for anybody that might need a resource because they're in rock bottom. Very, very curious about that.
So the clinic was, I mean, what I learned at the clinic. So first of all, I went to the clinic because my husband couldn't do the
and
job of
where is
taking
this
care
clinic,
of-
just for people listening?
This clinic was in Germany.
Okay.
I live in Cyprus, but I do speak German, so
Okay.
I'm sorry for all my English speakers, but it was a private clinic. They were called Vincera. So I don't mind mentioning them because they were amazing. And what they built up in me was, first of all, I was listened to. It was normal therapy, which like talk therapy kind of, but it managed to sort of build up my sense of self a tiny little bit of self-trust that maybe I am important. Maybe I can have my own back. That wasn't very developed at that point. It was just tiny little bits of hope. And they looked after me so well. And I did like alpaca therapy. There was a sauna. I didn't do ice baths, but I had like cold showers. There was creative ways of expressing yourself. My chronic neck and back pain became a little bit more easy and manageable. So it was just these tiny little steps of rebuilding my confidence and rebuilding my sense of self. Because the hopelessness had completely consumed me by then. So it was a little castle, by the way. It was a castle in the German countryside. It was just the most beautiful. And every day we had 3-course meals, and it was just gorgeous. I was so lucky. I'm the luckiest person.
Oh, I'm so glad you found that. And I just wanted to have you speak about that, because I think that there are certain cases where people do need an emergency container, and just to know that there are kind of resources out there for those emergency containers. So thank you for mentioning that.
And I also want to mention that I was very hesitant. I did not know how to get help. I was like, I don't want to end up in a clinic. I don't want to, my God, I don't want to end up with a psychiatrist, psychologist, like other doctors. I was kind of happy to look after my physical symptoms, but there was still a lot of shame attached to maybe not going to therapy. I tried therapy a little bit before, but like to be hospitalized, there was huge shame attached to that. Seriously. And to that end, it was the best experience ever. I did not expect that. So going that step of saying, hello, clinic, can I come? Oh, if I wasn't that desperate, I wouldn't have done it. But if I now knew, I would do it way sooner. There is support out there.
That's it's so important. I had a moment in my journey. I didn't end up in a clinic. I probably should have been in a clinic. Some of you guys know that I was very ill, probably about 10 years ago. I was really in the thick of it, same as you, where like my family was like, she needs to be in a psych ward. I was so sick. And I had a friend who had just completed some Byron Katie training of inquiry. And she's like, come to my house for a week. I'll cook for you. We'll do inquiry all day. She'll rub me, my friend Shirley. And that was my castle experience. And I did have that like emergency care, but with actual connection and helping me with my mindset. And I never went, I got out of it. It was my life raft too. And from there I could slowly climb out. And so I think it's important. Like, I know this is a testimonial interview about Primal Trust, but I want to just give this example that sometimes these emergency help situations of finding a clinic or a person that can just relieve your family, relieve your husband, whatever, and help you get a foothold can be monumental. And then from there, you can apply the tools. So that's kind of a diverging topic, but I just wanted to bring that into.
That's so true. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes we need that life raft before we can go back to this self-managed process that you were leading us through with Primal Trust. So I don't think maybe I could have started from this very bottom. I don't know. But the life raft, like starting from here, gave me the power and the energy to really go on my healing journey, which had started 5% at the clinic. It was more of a life raft and a healing journey from there. So yeah, at that moment.
So you found out about Primal Trust. Was there anything, were you hesitant on joining, or were you all in, or and then tell us about your experience and what happened with your symptoms.
So I was, by that time, and I want to mention that as well, by that time, I was pretty broke. A couple of years in, I had used up my money. So yeah, there was some hesitation around how am I going to pay for that. And I personally took the decision. I was like, I don't even have $50 in my account. I know I can't pay for this, but I knew I wanted to do this because I knew I had already started. Like I'd had experienced nervous system regulation in a trauma response. I knew this is what I wanted to do. So there were less hesitations there, but it was more about the financial commitment. And I reached out, and guys, seriously, this is how you make this happen. There is support out there, because I reached out to my dad, who I hadn't asked for anything for years, and we didn't have like the best of relationships, but at that time, I mean, we had a relationship, but he lives in LA, so I live in Cyprus. So most of the time when I go to bed, he's waking up. So it's a little bit of a difficult sign. But I was like, Dad, you've helped me out once, because he also paid for DNRS. I said, it's my birthday. There's this course. Can you help me? And so I didn't ask him for money or anything. I asked him to pay for treatments, basically. And I asked my dad if he could pay for the Primal Trust membership. And he was like, yeah, where do I sign up? I never thought, I thought this would be a struggle. It's like, well, you want me to pay for something here again? And I'm 42 at this point, asking your dad for help at that age was, I really had to put on my tough pants and, in order to ask him. But he was like, yeah, sure. And he signed up for me, and that's how I was able to afford it. I wasn't, but there was support out there. Even if it's a friend, and even if it's a different friend every month or whatever it is, there is still people that care for you and that have normal jobs that for them $99 or $97 is doable. So I just want to say that was my biggest hesitation on how to do it. But I knew I needed to do this. That's why I made it happen. Anyway, truly. Oh, I wouldn't have robbed the bank, but yeah.
And then how long ago did you join now?
I joined in August 22.
Okay, it's about a year ago.
Yeah, a year ago. And here comes the amazing part. And because I healed within 4 months. I'm not joking. Complex PTSD is something like working on the trauma and everything is, of course, that might take a little bit longer in total. But by January 2023, I had gotten so much better on so many levels. And I remember I had blood tests taken in November, and they were still, or maybe October. And for example, with insulin resistance, you have like a HOMA index. I don't know if that means anything to anybody, but the HOMA index kind of says from 2.5 onwards, you have insulin resistance. That's where my levels were roughly. I also had, Hashimoto and autoimmune antibodies that you could measure. And I had blood tests taken again in February. So this was like 5 months later. the HOMA index had gone from 2.5 to 0.69. I no longer had anything to do, like even close to insulin resistance. My antibodies for Hashimoto's had halved. I did have blood tests again a couple of months later. They had halved again until they were at 0. So
did you hear that, folks? A 0?
Yeah.
So you can reverse autoimmune Hashimoto's?
I think there's a little distinction, like some doctors say, well, antibodies are just there to diagnose. You don't need to measure them again afterwards because they don't really say if Hashimoto's is still present, and Hashimoto's can't be healed anyway. So I will label it as I am symptom-free completely and I don't have antibodies. However you want to label that, if that's healed or what, it's just not a problem for me anymore. So yeah, I'll say that to any medical professionals listening.
Yes, thank you for the clarification. That's awesome.
Yeah. I also, energy wise, oh my goodness, my energy picked up. I loved level 2 of Primal Trust, the mentorship, because I've been a coach for decades, for 10, 15 years at least. And I'd run my own coaching programs. I had been coached a million times, but going through level 2 mentorship, that was phenomenal for me, because it brought back this responsibility in this, I can trust myself. And there is an exercise in Primal Trust, I'm not going to spoil it, no worries, but it's about values. And I chose the value, I show up for myself. And I did. Like literally, it was my straw when things were not going right. It was my life raft when I did go into a trauma response, when I did have my abandonment and my rejection wounds sort of pop up and rear their ugly heads. I was like, okay, so what does this look like to show up for myself now? So yeah, absolutely love that.
And I love that you're talking about level 2, because we typically in these interviews, we talk about level 1. And it sounds like in level 1, in the first 4 months, you basically had a reversal of Hashimoto's symptoms, chronic fatigue, insulin, and your other stuff, which is awesome. Yeah. So for people who are like, well, why did you take level 2? And you just kind of mentioned it, but what would you say level 2 is, the mentorship to you?
Yeah. Like I was saying, it's starting to trust yourself again, focusing on hope. I moved on to level 2 very quickly. I don't think maybe that's not the right way to do it. I felt like, so level 1 for me was literally creating capacity to do level 2, I guess, as well. And it was creating capacity in my nervous system to handle all these difficult things, symptoms, physical symptoms, emotional symptoms. And level 2, I think I only did the first 4 modules or something, or maybe 5, and then didn't do the other ones for a long time. So it was just the first couple of modules, and it was literally like, reparenting my nervous system, really getting into my adult main personality of, what's the word? Truly creating a sense of self and deciding who I am despite all the symptoms I might still have. And it was so much easier already because in level 1, brain fog disappeared. The memory loss disappeared. Anomia, I think, is another one, like difficulties finding words. I had speech problems so much. Food intolerances decreased. My OCD symptoms decreased. What else extreme adrenal fatigue went down. I had so much more energy. Chronic neck and back pain. I think I slept wrong once on a plane, but in the last year I didn't have any neck or back pain anymore, so all the physical things disappeared. Skin disease, muscle cramps, tingling, numbness, sleep disorder.
Oh my gosh.
So many things.
What I love, and this happens in these interviews, people have to write a list because they can't even remember what they used to have. And they're like, wait. And that is so cool because that's not you anymore. It's not you anymore.
And I can show, also maybe demonstrate an example of what level 2 helped me do, because at some point, and it might have been due to changes of medication, all of a sudden my pulse dropped below 35. I think it was like around 34. And I was sitting there and kind of realized my heart was missing a beat, and, you know, it seemed extremely slow. And I just sat there and I'm like, am I dying? You know, is my pulse going to drop to 0? What's happening here? And this is level 2, because I sat there and was like, but I feel fine. I do not feel like I'm dying. So in truth, I'm not going to focus on this. I know this sounds really brutal. Like, if you need medical attention, go get medical attention. But I felt within me that it's probably the change in medication or something. It's not a problem. I did not panic. I sat there. I laughed with my husband, who I'm, by the way, still together, and we're more in love than we've ever been, because we've both worked on so many issues and we've come back on a completely new level of relationship and trauma-free, you know, being with each other. So that's just a side note. But again, going back to the pulse, I was like, I'm fine. I know I'm fine. And that's why I did not pay that much attention. And I don't know, an hour later it was gone. And I think changed medication again or something. And that was that. That's the problem solved, really. Yeah.
I love it. That is level 2, where we trust our body's wisdom, you know, when it's appropriate, and find that internal certainty. The body is recalibrating. And awesome example.
Mm-hmm.
So now we are a year later. What's life like for you now?
Oh my goodness. So I very gently started working again in maybe January, February. Very slowly. I was like, I don't think I can handle the pressure yet of, you know, running my business and doing like Facebook Lives and, you know, that like becoming visible. That was still a bit too much. But I slowly started to work again because I love my work. And I was so sad that I couldn't serve people for years. And then my granddad, who was like a father to me, died in March. So I was like, no, I'm kind of getting back up. I'm getting back into life. And then I have a severe loss in my family. It was very sad to see him go. And also I visited him, and he couldn't look after himself anymore. He needed constant care. So that was very difficult to be with, and having to try and help somebody else. But here's the thing again, and I think also this is level 2 again, because I went through all the emotions of losing somebody with the greatest love and self-compassion for myself. I had not experienced that. That was the most peaceful loss I'd ever experienced, and I could handle all the emotions. It was just amazing. I felt deep connection. I felt so much peace, love, joy, you know, joy and gratitude for the time I was able to spend with him, rather than you know, completely crashing and feeling all this pain. And I think that's what brain retraining does to you. It's it changes the response in your limbic system, and that's exactly what I experienced. That was amazing.
Wow, that's incredible that you had the capacity, and here you are. And I understand your business. You're back doing your business, and it's going. Yeah. How's it going with that?
Yeah, wonderful. So it started to pick up in May. I would say in May I was full on back. I was like more energy, more passion, more inspiration than I had before. And so yeah, I went back to purpose and business coaching. I am now a nervous system friendly business coach, because I know that, you know, we want to live our destiny, we want to live our purpose, but it has to be in a way that that, you know, feels safe, and we in rest and digest most of the time, and we just have all this pleasure and inspiration and passion come through, and in a nervous system friendly way that is sustainable for us. So I'm absolutely loving that. I have so much energy. I'm like, everything feels so much easier. And I'm not trying to say there's no challenges. There is sometimes it's hard to make decisions, or, sometimes I'm not 100% clear how to continue and progress. But this one value of I show up for myself, and I've discovered this huge self-compassion for myself. I can lead myself through all these challenges, no problem. So,
I
yeah.
love that. Wow. Wow, that's great. I mean, you're definitely embodying what we're hoping for here. And with that, I would love for you to share some wisdom of yours. If you could relate, what are some of the highlights that you wish you would have known, or wish you could have told yourself, or any of those that are struggling with similar things? Just take a moment, since you're a coach. For
Yeah.
those that are listening, what's some of your pearls of wisdom you'd love to share?
So I want to add something to the last
Sure.
thing first, because I started to apply the tools I learned in Primal Trust, and that saved my life. Literally, I would not be here otherwise. I started to apply those to my life and my business too. And all of a sudden, all other symptoms disappeared, like procrastination. I do not procrastinate anymore. Perfectionism, overwhelm, self-doubt. I have no time for that in my life. There's no space. I'm not making space for that in my life. So the amazing thing is it's also skyrocketed my business. So just want to say that as a side note. But words of wisdom, I literally did not think, like, feeling this helplessness and despair of being chronically ill for such a long time it's a relative number, I guess. But in those moments, because my limbic brain had this pattern of despair, this pattern of depression, this pattern of feeling hopeless and helpless. So I think the wisdom is, please know those are patterns, and that can be changed. Because now when a challenge comes up, I'm like, ooh, I haven't had a challenge for a while. How am I, it's almost fun. Not always, but so, but it's that can be changed. And I think if I'd known that, because when I was right in the trenches, right in the middle of it, I thought things will always be this way. I thought things will never change. And that was so hard. And maybe another nugget of wisdom is, this is a personal subjective thing, but I think it's never an either or, especially, like, for example, with supplements or medication or things like that. I do still take Hashimoto's medication, but really only for the reason that that me and my husband want to get pregnant again, and I want to support my thyroid, and I have no problem with that, helping a little bit, supporting with hormonal treatment a little bit. It's not an either or, or for example, if you have food intolerances, to take like enzymes or whatever, or if you're lacking vitamin D, it's not a problem. Take vitamin D, support your body. It's like, I'm not one to sell supplements and say, oh, this is all that's going to heal you. No way, that didn't work for me. I was chasing all those, supplement and functional medicine and whatnot. That was the combination. I also did EMDR therapy for the past year, and that's helped as well. I also started weight training because I had a lot of energy, and my body is getting stronger. So it's never an either or. It's like, what is the right healing journey for you? Primal Trust was just huge in that. I think it was the total foundation of this, and I added in modalities as I felt them fit and right for me. So.
I love that. And I agree completely. And say it again, I'm not a purist. I see Primal Trust as, that foundation, the building block that helps your supplements, your diets, your exercise, your therapies all work better if you choose to do them. And I love that you've put a voice to that. And I'm just so grateful for your story and your quick turnaround, frankly. I mean, that's wonderful that you were able to come out of so much of your symptoms so quickly, and then really focus on recreating who you are and being able to now help so many others. And I also think, we have this program for chronic illness, but I really think, you know, these business leaders, I know even for me as a business leader, like nervous system work is essential. It is essential. And I think that you're bringing that gift to the world of those who are, you know, coming to you for business coaching. And so thank you for including that very important ingredient that I think all of us business leaders need these days, so much stimulation. And that being said, for those that are running their own business, you're a business coach, what are some signs to look for that their nervous system, that they might need some nervous system work, even though they're healthy? What might be some signs to look for?
So I've truly come up with this theory that all these things kind of run on a spectrum. And early signs that I completely missed were fear of criticism and visibility, fears and worries in general, rumination, planning, strategizing, but never going into action mode, procrastination, self-sabotage, things like perfectionism. I would count that towards self-sabotage, fear of failure, financial fears and traumas, difficulty making decisions. Those are, to me, those are early signs of dysregulation. Stress, tension, urgency. I must solve this now. I must be successful now. I must get this off the ground or else. You know, these kind of thought patterns. That's not how you run a healthy business. I did this for years. You know, I was like, oh, this has to work. Like if it doesn't work, then I don't know, this and the other. Brain fog, difficulties concentrating, yeah, those kind of things. Distraction, binging, Netflixing, that kind of stuff as well. And for me, it sort of then on the spectrum became like migraines, sleep problems, you know, a disrupted cycle, for example, hormonal problems, muscle spasm, neck pain. And then it sort of went even higher with chronic inflammation, panic attacks, leaky gut, digestive issues, helplessness. And in the end, autoimmune disease and even I think cancer and depression and things like that are on the very high end of the spectrum. So especially for business people, this is how it shows up. And this is how you can identify that you may have a couple of thought patterns and sort of trauma patterns that are not serving you in business. Because I think business is like fulfilling our purpose and getting our purpose out there is something that is allowed to feel light and fulfilling and joyful. So yeah.
Thank you for speaking to that. I'm noticing more and more, we've had a few business people trickling in, entrepreneurs, CEOs trickling into Primal Trust, and they're like, how do I do this? I'm like, you know, I'm going to be speaking to the word like chronic illness and trauma, just substitute the word burnout, overwhelm, etc. whenever I say illness, because these same tools still apply. They help you out of chronic illness, but they're also illness prevention and they're also burnout help. So thank you for giving them that trajectory of what can happen, because that's exactly what I see. I see it usually end up with like digestive issues is kind of one of their first physical symptoms, and the headache thing, and then it just snowballs.
Sleep problems were early for me as well. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Totally, yeah. Because it's you know, it can feel hard, and setting up your own business, you are doing so many new things at once. You're going out there and you're saying, this is what I stand for, and this is what I want to bring this into the world. You know, it's huge challenges. I mean, there's a thing called Imposter Syndrome, and there's so many battles to overcome. So yeah, it's totally helpful.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this interview, for your testimonial, for your sharing, for your wisdom. And then where can people find you if they are like, wow, I'd love to coach with her? How can they find you?
Well, thank you. It's catherinelifedesign.com, for example, is my website. I do have a nervous system test on there for entrepreneurs, not just for entrepreneurs, but like to see where your dysregulation is level at the moment. And yeah, Catherine life design, because I went through a lot of emotional and narcissistic abuse as a child, and I was not free to be who I was back then. And I was always obsessed with designing and creating a life I love. And that's why that became my kind of stage name. So yeah, CatherineLifeDesign.com or Catherine Life Design on Instagram or Facebook, same name, really. Thank you for that
Very
opportunity.
cool. Very cool. Well, thank you. And I can't wait to see what you're doing a year from now and how you've just continued to blossom and now helping others. So thank you.
Thank you so much.